We continue in the Word of God. Please, I beg you that you would keep me in your prayers, that I confidently tell what I have prepared. Because whenever I stand here, though I speak in other places, in small groups, it's easy to speak at that time. But the moment you step here, you start stuttering and I may not say everything that I have prepared. So please pray for me that I'll have the clarity of thought, that I'll be able to present that which I've prepared, and that you would hear what God has intended for you to be hearing. Dare to stand apart. Today in this world, many people dare in doing many things. Okay? A lot of things they do. I put some pictures of things that people dare to do. People want to skydiving, they want to do climbing. Now this is a tent, if you can see. It's in the vertical cliff. And this is the tent and he's going there to sleep. Okay, that's one of the daring things. And you know about the Guinness World Records of 2018. Now you can see people daring things that people do. That book is filled with, I don't know, it's like 500 pages or something, with pictures. And people want to climb mountains. And this is, if you were following the news, this is the rescue team, in Thailand, Malaysia, Thailand, where the boys, just for there, they went into a cave to experience how it is going to be there. They were thinking of really spending like an hour or so, but they got lost inside. And, how many of us would dare to do this? Of course, you're in a cage, but what if something opens up? And what about this? There are so many people who do this, and many have been killed as well. People trying to do this. I remember I see in one kind of a cult group who call themselves Christians, they have snakes with them and they play with the snakes, and the pastor actually was killed trying to play with the snakes in there. This morning I would like to challenge you as well with few dares, especially for the younger ones in the church, the children. I want you all to pay very close attention to what I'm going to be saying, and because I've prepared this message keeping in mind that even the smallest would understand. Who's the smallest? We got Aaron there, little Aaron, not this Aaron, and you got artists as well. Lovely is not here, but I'm not sure if she'll understand everything. These days are not to entice you to do something which is not worthy of your time or attention, but it is to challenge you and to encourage you to a direction which points to the right direction. When you look around, we know that we are living in a world today where right is wrong and where wrong is right. Before I could continue any further, I'd like to spend some time in prayer. Please pray for me as well as I requested you. Our loving Father, as we open your scriptures, I pray that you would open our hearts and our minds, that you would understand, that we would understand what is it that you want us to know from the verses that we are going to be studying. I pray that you would be with the children in a special way, that they would understand that as we look into the days, that they would accept it as a challenge to stand for you, to stand apart, to dare to stand apart for your sake. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We're going to be reading from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 22, verses 23 onwards. And the word of the Lord, actually I wanted to put this in I forgot I should have done it. I wanted to put it in a simple English version so that it will be very clear to understand. But nonetheless, this is from the King James Version. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto her, Thou art the land that is not cleansed, nor rained upon in the day of indignation. There is a conspiracy of prophets in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion, ravening the prey. They have devoured souls, they have taken the treasure and precious things. They have made her many widows in the midst thereof. Her priests have violated my law, and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither have they shewed difference between the unclean and the clean. And I hid their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey, and shed blood, and to destroy souls, to get dishonest gain. And the prophets have taught them with untempered mortar, seeing vanity, and divining lies unto them, saying, Thus saith the Lord God, when the Lord hath not spoken. Sorry, skip this one. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery, and have vexed the poor and needy. Yea, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully. I want to concentrate mainly the next verse 30. But before I could go there, I need to put things in context. I need to let everyone know the setting for the verse 30 which is there. Now the setting in which the book of Ezekiel was written by Ezekiel. Okay? The setting in which Ezekiel wrote these words is very, very interesting. And it is very important in context of what I'm going to be saying. Now, 100 years earlier to this, when these words were written, the northern kingdom of Israel had ceased to exist. The Assyrians had subjugated the land, and they scattered God's people across the empire. Before that, many prophets came and they warned about the impending danger that they will be captured and that they will be scattered like that. But the children of Israel refused. They did not listen to the word of God. They refused to turn back to worship the true God. And by doing this, they exposed themselves to the threats of the enemy, exactly like what God had warned them. And they lost their freedom, and many of them lost their lives as well. Now, you need to understand that God is not forcing them to do something. Okay? It is a simple case where if you worship the true God and if you follow everything that is said, if you don't do that, then you forfeit the protection that God is there. It's like you walking away from the protection that God has promised us. The only safety for the children of Israel and for us today as well is in the divine protector, our God that we worship. And if we refuse His presence, we would be doomed, just like how the children of Israel faced as well. Now, it was a hostile world at that time, during the time of Ezekiel. The northern kingdom, as I said, was gone and it was finished, and it was overthrown. The southern kingdom, Judah, was approaching its doom as well. And in 605 BC, you can read that in Daniel chapter 1, verse 1. If you can recall it. It says about Nebuchadnezzar. What did Nebuchadnezzar do? He came in, he marched in, and the children, you can read that in Daniel 1:1 if you can recall it. Now this is about Daniel and his 3 friends. They were all taken as captives. Why were they taken as captives? Because they wanted them to relearn about Babylonian education, their culture and everything, to serve the king. There were selected people who were taken in there. Now, after eight years, in 597 BC, just after 3 months of ruling Judah, Jehoiachin was taken captive along with 10,000 more people. Among these people was Ezekiel as well. Now, they were all in captivity. Captives, slaves, they were not treated very good. They were being oppressed, they were being punished if they don't listen to what is being said. So that is the life that Ezekiel was going through. Now, you should also remember that Ezekiel was a young man when he went, just like Daniel and his friends. Ezekiel was a very young man when he was taken as captive. Now, after 11 years of this captivity, the temple was burnt and it was destroyed. And the Bible says that only a few people of the very poor were left behind to take care of the vineyards. So they were captives in their own land to take care of the vineyard. Now, if you stop and think about the sequence that happened, God was very patient. God was very patient, and He was working with these people, these hard-hearted people. He was working with them. Even though we see that Nebuchadnezzar came in, he did not destroy all the city at once. There was time. There were 3 attempts before the 20 years period, when everything was destroyed. It was like as if God was waiting for them. He put check, he can come this far, but no more further. That is the check that he had placed, so that the temple and these people will not be destroyed. All because he was waiting for them to turn their hearts back to worship the true God. Now, as I said, these people were living in a very, very turbulent times. It was stressful, it was hard, and it was the same for Ezekiel as well, when he was taken captive. Now, instead of sobering the people up, people became more and more hard-hearted, and they continued to do wrong things, and they refused to listen and to reason, and because of that, they were suffering. Now, in these verses that we just read, we find who it was that led God's people into rebellion. Okay, from all the verses that we read. If we go back to verse 25. Okay, who is leading them? It is the prophets. Okay, so we see here that the prophets, and we see that in 28 as well. And the prophets, okay, they are the ones who led them into rebellion against God. It's interesting, isn't it? The prophets leading the children of Israel, God's children, into rebellion. And some of them, they're called as whitewashed people. They look good on the outside, but inside it was not so. The mark was, everything that came out was not good at all. In verse 26, priests. Okay, it was the priests as well. The priests led them into rebellion as well. They did not put. There was no difference between holy and unholy. Everything became common. They made unholy things to be treated as holy. They just went as it is. Verse 27, princes. Okay. Now, princes, they were the rulers. They are the ones who cared for the people. But in this, you see that they never cared for human life. And verse 29. You see that the people of the land have used oppression. So it's given a list of everybody, prophets, priests, who else? Princes and the people. If all of them are involved, who is left? Nobody. Okay? So they did not give thought to the consequences of their action. It is with this context that we read verse 30. Oops. And I sought for a man among them that should make up a hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. It is the same thing, same kind of verse that we read in the scripture reading, Jeremiah. It says the same thing as well. God is calling at least one person at that time to stand in the gap. Children, are you listening? Okay, and God is saying, what did God say? Did he find anyone? Did he find anyone? God is finding somebody to fill the gap which has happened there. We'll learn more about what this gap is. Okay, so God says he did not find anyone. The foundation of the children of Israel, the children of Judah, was fallen. There was no basis for them. Chaos was the order of the day. As it is today, right was considered wrong, and wrong was considered right in those days as well. Now these people were supposed to be a peculiar people. The good, the genuine. That's what they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be the faithful to God. They were supposed to live as an example. They were supposed to have the best education. They were supposed to be in the best health. But because of their careless spirit, they became no different than the people in the surrounding nations. That was the plight of these people. And with this background is when God is looking for someone to stand for him. Things were horrible, just like we see outside today. Now, what does it mean when it says, children, what does it mean when God says, stand in the gap? It's not talking about when you go in the train, mind the gaps. Have you heard that? No, it's not that. Okay, so what is this? What does the stand in the gap mean? Okay, it also talks about hedge. Make up a hedge and stand in the gap. What does this mean? Okay, in other verses, there is also, I think it's breach. In another version, it also talks about breach. Stand in the breach or the gap. What is it exactly talking about? Now, in those days, the cities were, around the cities were fortified by walls. Okay, that was the safety for the city. It was the protection for them that the enemies will not come and attack. If at all there was somebody broke a wall by the enemies or somebody had to stand in there, literally, as a soldier, to fight the enemy so that they will not be able to come in. Okay, that is the context of this one. If there is a gap, the enemy will be able to easily come inside and attack the city and take over and destroy or do whatever they want to do. Even today we see that America wants to build a wall, isn't it? Around so many places, the president wants to build a wall to protect from the so-called enemy from entering the city without proper permits or whatever it is. So what was required really was for somebody to stand there as a soldier who would not be bothered about losing his own life in order to protect somebody else. That was the requirement for the day. So what was the danger that God is talking about here? We all know, we read the other verses. Spiritually speaking, there was a big gap. There was a big breach. And who enters into the gap of the breach that was created? Of the breach that was created among the people. It should be Jesus standing in the gap, but who created the gap in the first place? Okay, Satan made the gap so that as an enemy he can come and attack everyone. Do you have a gap in yourself today? Is there a breach? Is there a hole that Satan can come in and destroy you just like how Jerusalem was destroyed because there was a breach. God is seeking someone to stand in the breach in the world as a whole as well. It's not for smaller communities and the families and whatever it is. Are you willing to be the man to stand as the hedge and stand in the gap before me in the land? That is the question that God is asking. We can learn few lessons from these, from the call that Ezekiel, from these things that we just went through, from the verses that we went through. 3 lessons that we can learn. The first lesson is from the call of Ezekiel. Now, as I told, Ezekiel was a very young person, probably like one of you, 2 or 3 of you sitting in there, or maybe some of you sitting in there. Here, he was very young, and he was taken away from his family. He was taken as a captive, as a prisoner. And this is the time, I talked about all the oppression and all the hard times that they were going through. This is the time when God called him to a very, very important position, to be a very important office in God's work. And what was the office? God called him to be a prophet. In effect, Ezekiel at that time was called to stand in the gap. Okay? He was there to protect the people. He was called to protect the people. He was called to promote the right and the truth. God saw in this young man, Ezekiel, something that when joined to his strength would affect a positive change in lives of others at that time. Would you be a change in, would you be the one who would be the one to stand in the gap to bring about change in others' life? Doesn't matter how old you are. Age doesn't matter. Last week we heard the sermon about a few people. I think it was 4 of them, isn't it? All of them were quite aged. 85 years, what was that? Okay. We studied about Paul. He was not a young person. So age is not a barrier, it is a mix. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. God can use you for some great work. God does not take into consideration for youngsters like this one how tall you are, or how maybe how big shoes you have, or how strong you are. Okay. He doesn't call that way. But when he calls, what does he do? When God calls you, he equips you. He doesn't call the ones who think that they're equipped, but the ones who are called, he equips them with whatever that is needed. He equipped Paul, who was Saul before. Okay? He was the one who was persecuting. We studied that today. He was the one persecuting the Christians at that time, but he was the one who became the one to stand in the gap. Not only can we learn from the call of Ezekiel, we can learn from the time that Ezekiel lived in as well. The time that he lived in, it was a lawless state, just like how it is today in many aspects. There was violence everywhere, just like today. Now, when we live in that kind of life, many of the young people actually, they become desensitized to what is happening around them. They become used to all the corruptions or the violence and things that are happening around them, and it doesn't affect them anymore. It was the same that happened to Ezekiel. He lived in the midst of violence and lawlessness, but then he stood and he accepted the challenge to stand in the gap for God's people. It didn't faze him. He was not distracted by the things that was happening around him. He stood as a spokesman for God, and he was not distracted from the opposite sex or to a female, and he was not distracted by the kind of music that was there at that time. He was not, I don't know what kind of entertainment was going on in those days. Today we have Xbox and PlayStation and all that. He was not distracted by those things. These are the things which promote unclear thinking in our young minds. But Ezekiel stood in the gap according to the plan, and as he surrendered himself to that. And we can also learn about the courage that Ezekiel had. It takes a lot of courage to stand, to be different, to swim against the current. Being different is what God has called us to be, including the children. I don't mean when we say different, it is not being weird. That's what people say when you say different. It used to be in those days. It used to be you would be called crazy if you had different kinds of hair, colored hair and all that. You would be called crazy if you had piercings or tattoos around you. But today, it's become the norm. And more people are just doing more stranger and stranger things. And today also, if boys and girls, if they keep their hair neat, they would be called weird, isn't it? If they dress up neatly, they will be called weird because they don't fit in the crowd because of how the world is going in there. And if you seek to do well in school, that you want to study, you want to excel in your studies, you will not be allowed into certain groups. You would be called weird. Come on, you don't be a nerd and things like that. You would be called. The table has the table turned from when we were young. Now once we were all young, isn't it? Like the children here. How much has the table turned? We are actually living in a very interesting or challenging portion of Earth's history, which is soon coming to close. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 24. Can somebody read that, please, before we go here? Leviticus chapter 20, verse 24.
Leviticus 20:24 says, "But I have said unto you, ye shall inherit their land, and I will give it unto you to possess it, a land that floweth with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, which has separated you from other people."
Okay, what is God saying? I am the Lord your God, which has separated you from other people. Okay, that is what God is interested in. God says here that the people of the world, I'm carving you out of the people of this world today. I don't want you to be part of the world. I want you to be separate. When God says being separate, He doesn't mean that you have to become a hermit, where you go stay in a cave and live for yourself. No, that's not what it says. He says that, but that God's people would be clearly identified as His people among everybody. That's what He means when He says you have to be separate. When I was in high school, somehow one of my PE teacher recognized that I could run very fast. Okay, and he wanted me to have a trial with some of the already established very fast runners. And so I was called out, and then I was called separately and allowed to train with them every morning. So I had the privilege of going out of classes, from studies, from regular classes, and accounting first lesson, and I was taken away along with the others to do some drills and practice every day. This was ongoing. And lo and behold, he worked so much on us that we became quite good at what we were called to do. We were called out separately, and we became good at what we were doing. And we represented the school in many levels. And it felt really good. Okay, we were also called separately for pictures as a group. And we won many shields for the school. The school name, when as a team we used to walk around in stadiums where we used to run, people used to look at us and they used to fear. They say, oh, not from the school, we can't compete against them. That was the status that the school had because of the team that we had. It is indeed wonderful to be recognized, to be separate. Okay? That is what God wants us to be. Not as in sports or anything like that, but God wants, He's calling us to be separate. Okay? When it comes to being separate, this verse stands out. It reads, "For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto Himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth." He wants to consider you and I to be special people, not just being weird and standing out. No, that's not what He's saying. He's telling He wants us to be special. He wants us to be peculiar in the sense that not doing the things of the world that is being done in today. In New Testament, okay, before I go any further, we can go to that one later, what I said now. Okay, the next verse in the same chapter, "The Lord did not set His love upon you or chose you because you were more in number than any other people, for you were fewest of all the people, but because the Lord loved you." Okay. God is expecting to be with Him. He didn't separate the children of Israel because they were large in number or because they were strong, but it was because He loved you. That's what God claimed. What a wonderful privilege to be separate in the Lord. Not because of who we are, not because of our abilities, but because He loves us. In the New Testament, we see this verse as well, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should shew forth the praises of Him who hath called you out of darkness into His marvelous light." Basically, He's saying, will you stand apart? Will you dare to stand apart for me? And when God called Ezekiel, He called him to put himself. He called him to be separated. He wanted him to be called as a holy. Today, He has called us to be holy as well. He's calling us to be sacred, to be pure. Isn't it a great message that you are special to God? But the thing is, do you have the courage to stand apart from the world and allow God to distinguish you from those around you? Children, do you dare to be separated, to be holy, and to be special in your homes, in your neighborhoods, and in your schools? Today, I dare you. And I want to give you a few dares that you can follow, if you dare to stand apart for God. There it goes. First one. I dare you to never be ashamed of Jesus Christ. Never be ashamed of Jesus Christ. Most people know of Jesus today as like a cursing word. When something happens, oh, Jesus. That's the expression that comes out from many people. It has become increasingly popular among Christians, among even our people. to follow the same trend. But I dare you to never be ashamed of Jesus, the true Jesus, not as a swear word. And never to be embarrassed, never to be ashamed to be identified with the one who wants to call you as special children. I dare you to love and honor your parents. It may sound very simple, but one of the hallmarks and sign of the nearing of Christ is that young people will become more and more defiant against parental authority or any authority for that matter. And they would become indifferent, they would show lack of respect to anybody for that matter. So I dare you to show respect to your parents, to honor them, and I dare you to listen to them, love them, happily do whatever you have been asked to do without rolling your eyes or your shoulder, shrugging your shoulder, and without saying, do I have to do it? I dare you to serve Jesus and those around you. In a day when it's popular to live for yourself, today it's promoted that, others doesn't matter. You need to succeed in your life. When that is the norm today, I dare you to stand and think about everyone else around you. I dare you to be selfless. Children, are you listening? I dare you to be selfless and sacrificing, to consider how a person might feel when you do something wrong in any kind of act. That you would lay aside your personal rights and claiming them, but that you would lay aside those personal rights and attempt to win someone towards Christ instead of always going maybe to play some games or something. Volunteer in the activities of the church. Instead of always wanting to watch TV or whatever that you watch, find out where you can help around the house or where you might be able to help someone around you. Parents, watch out. You will need to have a commitment first of all, because if your children are going to come and say, I want to volunteer to do these things, you should commit yourselves to take them around. Okay, you should make time to do that as well. The fourth one that I would like to give is set a good example. I dare you to set a good example. Live right. Eat the right things. Have the right attitude. Be diligent in everything that you do. I dare you to give the best in everything that you do, whether it be studies or studying the Word of God, talking to someone. Do the best. Don't do it half-heartedly just for the sake of doing it. Let your parents surprise your parents. Let them say, "Oh, what happened to you?" It simply means that you are not going to do things in your own way anymore. That you would only do things according to what Jesus has told you to do. When I dare you, when you are tempted to cheat, be honest. When you're tempted to steal, walk away. When you're tempted to be upset, be kind, be patient. And when you know it's going to harm you, when you know that something is going to harm your mind or your body or whatever it is, just say no. Don't indulge in things that you should not be indulging in. I dare you to always use your head, meaning your brains. All of us make a lot of times dumb choices. We must have made many in our younger days as well. I don't know what the best thing to do is, but you could ask your parents. If you don't know what to do, just ask your parents or someone who knows whom you can rely on. Open the Bible. Bible has answer for everything. I dare you to admit, children when they do some mistake, the first thing they say, I didn't do it. Even the smallest ones, they would say, no, I didn't do it, it's not me. Admit it when you're wrong. It's easy when you're young to think that you are invincible. Nobody can beat me, I'm the best. That's what you think. You would always think that I'm never wrong, I'm always right. But I dare you, when you know that you have done something wrong, accept it. Say sorry. Just admit it. And when you know that it is wrong, let that be a stepping stone for you towards success. Not that you will not go back to it again, but to grow in God's grace. I dare to be pure. This is one of the Pathfinder, the Law of the Pledge. Is it the Pathfinder Law of the Pledge? Is it the Pathfinder Law of the Pledge? Be pure. What is that? Is it confusing? Okay, I dare you to be pure. When crazy music is enticing your minds, your young hearts, when peer pressure because of the group that you are in is calling you to taste something that you're not supposed to, or when you grow and things start changing, you start experiencing physical changes in your body, and you want you think of doing something that is not to be done before marriage. Stay pure. Don't even go into that. I dare you to reveal Christianity to be a pleasure. It is easy for today's children to see Christianity as a restrictive with so many rules and don't do this, don't do that. But let me tell you, any fence or any gate that is put up is not to prevent a person from having fun, but to preserve the life as God intends for each of us. Living for Jesus is the greatest adventure that you could possibly have here and now. So, I dare everyone, not just the children, to allow others to see Christ in you. The last one I'd like to tell is to dare to be ready for the return of Christ. We know from the scriptures that we are indeed living in the last days, and we are living in the verge of when Christ is going to be. He is at the door. Let us allow him. Many children today have become accustomed to the wrongs that are there in this world today, as I said earlier. They do not realize that things that they're doing are wrong because they have become accustomed to those things. Things have really changed from our younger days. And it has not changed for the better, but for the worse. What we need today, more and more than any time in the generations past, is a radical relationship with Jesus Christ. In the strength of Jesus Christ, until you see His Savior coming in the clouds of heaven, I urge everyone, including the children, to stand apart and to stand in the gap. Some time ago in the 1990s, Time magazine published 100 most influential people of the century. There were all kinds of people, like famous people, Princess Diana, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Albert Einstein. The list went on. But one image, these were all pictures of people published in that magazine. One image stood. I don't know if anybody remembers this. Anybody remembers this? Okay. This thing happened in China. I don't want to explain what it is. I could have explained, but then there's a video to explain what it is. It's just a 5-minute video, and then we will close. This man is referred to as the tank man.
As the world watches and listens, in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end, crushed by waves of Chinese military forces.
To the diplomatic compound where the AP office is, and there's a message from New York saying we don't want anyone to take any unnecessary risk, but if somebody photographed the Occupy Tiananmen Square, we would appreciate it. So we drew straws. I got the short straw. So I had to go out, and I was so scared. Pedaling, you see smashed bicycles, there's debris, you hear occasional pot shots from gunfire in the back alleyway. And I'd heard that the Beijing hotel had security, and these security were going around using electric cattle prods on journalists to give up on all their equipment. So I'd hidden my camera as best I could. In the shadows of the lobby, I saw this tall Western college kid, and I walked up to him and I just said, "Hey Joe, where you been? I've been looking for you." And I whispered, "I'm from AP, can you let me up to your room?" And he said, "Yeah, come on." This was Kirk Martin, and Kirk Martin played a major role in the Tank Man photo. What made me totally unsettled was the fact there was a bullet hole right behind me on the wall. So I knew that I was easy pickings for anybody who wanted to get me. There was tanks pushing out, burned out buses. There were people riding around on bicycles, and I'd be photographing that. And then finally I ran out of film, and I told Kirk, "Do you think you can find me some more film? I can't go back out and take a chance getting discovered as a journalist." And he comes back in about 2 or 3 hours with one roll of film. I heard this noise of tanks coming down the street, and I went out to the balcony and I see the column of tanks coming towards me. And I'm thinking, "Oh, this is a nice compressed shot of the tanks." And all of a sudden, this guy with shopping bags walks out in front, and I'm looking at it, and I get annoyed, and I look at Kirk, and I said, "This guy's gonna screw up my composition." He goes, "They're gonna kill that guy, they're gonna kill him." And I looked, and I said, "This guy's crazy." You hear gunfire going on everywhere, and the guy doesn't flinch. He just stays there. Not only pop shots from the AK-47s, but there was automatic fire from large caliber you could hear, and he still did it. Just unbelievable how much courage he had to just fight his cause there. When I finally got to the balcony, I took 1, 2, 3 shots, and Kirk says, "Did you get it? Did you get it?" You could say it's David and Goliath, but I think it goes beyond David and Goliath. Here's this guy who is obviously just out shopping, and finally he's just had enough, and he goes out on the street with these oncoming tanks. If he's halfway normal, he thinks he's gonna die, but he doesn't care. He just doesn't care because for whatever reason, either he's lost a loved one, or he's just had it with the government, or whatever it is. His statement is more important than his own life.
This man, he stood in the breach. He stood in the gap of of a time when this big protest was going on in China. Today, and in the time of Ezekiel, God called people out. Today, God calls you in this time of Earth's history towards the close, just before Jesus comes. He's calling you and me to stand, to have the courage to stand in the gap, to stand in the right. We're not talking about protests, but we're talking about doing the right thing according to the word of God. We're not talking about political activism or anything like that here. But we are here deciding to reveal God's grace in our life through His goodness. And so, are you willing to uphold God's truth? I know by our strength it is not possible. Let us invite God's presence in our life. As God is calling you to dare for Him, will you dare to stand apart?